never thought my quiet little job at a 24-hour corner store would change the way I looked at people forever. I'd been working there nearly 3 years when it happened. The place sat right across from the back alley behind my apartment complex, close enough that I could jog there in under a minute if my shift started early, or if I forgot my keys again. Back then I was 31, married, and just trying to keep things steady. My husband Tyler drove delivery routes that kept him out late, sometimes overnight. We'd pass each other like strangers in our own home. The neighborhood wasn't great, but rent was cheap and the job paid just enough to scrape by. You learned to tune out the drunks yelling in the street, the broken glass under the streetlights, the sound of laughter that turned sharp in the distance. You tell yourself that's just city life, but that summer things started to feel wrong. It was mid-July, one of those mornings when the air felt heavy even before sunrise. By the time I got to work, sweat was already running down my back beneath my uniform polo. My coworker, Haley, was behind the counter, 20-something, loud laugh, always joking about how this place was just a stopover before Hollywood. She was easy to like. We were restocking drink lids, putting up signs for the weekend sale, when the bell above the door gave its tired jingle. I didn't look up right away. People drifted in and out all day, but Haley muttered under her breath, check this guy. And that tone made me glance up. A man had walked in with a boy who looked maybe 8 or 9. The guy was tall, 6 feet give or take, but wiry. His skin was deep brown, his long braids tied back and swinging when he moved. What stopped me was his coat. A heavy trench that brushed his knees, the kind of thing you wear in a storm, not in 85 degrees of July heat. Morning, I said automatically, giving my customer smile. He gave a short nod, his accent thick, Caribbean maybe. You sell GPS here? I almost laughed. No, not really. We've got phone chargers, earbuds, cheap stuff like that, but no GPS. There's a tech store a few blocks down. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. His eyes held mine, too long, too still. It felt like he was cataloging me. The boy tugged on his sleeve and said something in a language I couldn't place. The man answered softly, then turned back to me. You from around here? I blinked. Yeah, close by. Why? You look familiar. His smile widened. Maybe I saw you before. You got beautiful eyes. You do yoga or something? I let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, sometimes. I can tell. You got strong legs. Haley's head snapped up from the counter. Her eyes met mine, and I could practically hear her saying, "What the hell?"
Can I help you find something?
I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted over the tattoos on my forearm. I like your tattoos, he said. You got more? My face flushed hot. Sir, I'm here to help you shop. That's it? He laughed low, the sound rough and strange. Okay. Don't be mad. I turned away, pretending to straighten a shelf, but I could feel his stare crawling up my back. Every time I looked over, he'd pretend to browse, never actually touching anything. Then I heard it, a click. The unmistakable sound of a phone camera. Hey, I snapped, spinning around. Don't do that. He blinked, feigning confusion. What you mean? You just took a picture of me. He shrugged, smiling faintly. No picture. You mistake. I'm not stupid, I said, louder now. Haley came up beside me, eyes narrowed. You need to leave, man. You can't do that here. He muttered something to the boy, then turned back to me. For a split second, our eyes locked, and something in that look made my stomach twist. It wasn't anger. It was hunger. Then he smiled once more and walked out, the bell jangling as the door closed behind him. I went straight to the office, my hands trembling. Haley followed and shut the door. Jesus, she said. That guy was creepy. You okay? I'm fine, I said, even though my voice shook. I hate this shit. Every damn week it's some guy being weird. We laughed it off, but it didn't really feel funny. His face kept replaying in my head, that still studying look. That night I was closing up. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the store as I counted the drawer. One of the stock guys came over holding an envelope. Some dude told me to give you this, he said. Said you'd know what it was about. My stomach dropped. What dude? Tall guy. Braids, had a kid with him earlier. I felt my pulse spike. When was that? Like 10 minutes ago, he said, shrugging. He said not to open it until you got home. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I got home, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table. The apartment was dim, just the glow from the microwave clock bleeding across the counter. Tyler was already asleep in the bedroom, his soft snoring echoing faintly through the half-closed door. My hands were slick with sweat as I stared at the envelope. Finally, I tore it open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me behind the counter. Me unlocking the store in the morning light. Me walking my dog. Me in my own backyard. Caught through the slats of the fence, my breath caught. My fingers trembled as I flipped through them faster and faster. Every image was me, like someone had been living inside my shadow. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might faint. At the bottom of the stack was a folded sheet of paper, handwritten in shaky cursive. "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I love the way you walk, the way you smile. I could make you happier than your husband. Please give me a chance, Raul." He'd signed it, his real name. I sat frozen for a long time, listening to the hum of the fridge. Then I grabbed my phone and called the police. My voice cracked as I tried to explain. They came, took the photos, the letter, even pulled the security footage from that morning. The next day, my manager called me into the office. He looked uneasy, arms crossed tight. "They caught the guy," he said. "He's claiming it's a misunderstanding. Said he was just trying to get your attention. Police warned him to stay away and banned him from the store." I remember nodding, pretending to breathe again. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A month later, on a Sunday shift, the store was slammed. Customers shoulder to shoulder, a line snaking past the snack aisle. I was ringing people up when I noticed him, or what I thought was him, standing by the drinks cooler. Tall, same build, same long braids, same trench coat. But the face was different, sharper somehow. My stomach turned to ice. I leaned toward Haley, whispering, "Hey, that guy's freaking me out."
You seen him before?
She glanced up, frowned. "Nope, never." When I looked back, he was gone, just gone. I told myself to stop imagining things, but I couldn't shake it. I went to the back to grab some boxes, trying to steady my breathing. The hallway smelled like cleaner and cardboard. As I passed the small mirror by the supply closet, something flickered behind me. I turned and froze. In the reflection, Raul was standing at the end of the back aisle, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, tense, laced with that heavy accent. "Yeah, she's here. Just her and another girl. I'll get her when she leaves. It's under control." My blood went cold. I ducked behind the stock shelf, heart hammering so loud it felt like the sound would give me away. My hands shook uncontrollably. I could see his shadow stretching along the floor as he paced. Without thinking, I slipped toward the front, moving as quietly as I could. When I reached the counter, I grabbed Haley's arm. "He's here," I whispered. "He's talking to someone about getting me." Her eyes widened. "Call the cops now." She didn't hesitate. She hit 911 and locked the doors. We told the customers to stay put. My legs felt weak, like I might collapse right there. Within minutes, flashing blue lights washed through the front windows. Police came in through the back, shouting commands, "Get on the ground. Hands where we can see them." He didn't run, didn't fight, just smiled that same unnerving smile as they pinned him down and cuffed him. Later that night, a detective came to talk to me. His face was grave, his voice steady but low. "Miss," he said, "the man we arrested tonight isn't Raul. It's his brother. They've both been under investigation for months. We believe they're tied to a human trafficking ring spanning 3 states." I felt my throat close. "You're serious?" He nodded slowly. "We found evidence linking them to several missing women. You did the right thing calling us." I couldn't respond. My hands were numb. The sound of the store's humming freezers filled the silence between us. A week later, the detective called again. Another victim had been found, a woman who hadn't been so lucky. She'd been taken, abused, and left for dead in her own apartment. I hung up and cried until my throat hurt. After that, every sound in the dark felt like a warning. Every car that slowed outside made my skin crawl. I stopped walking to work. I stopped taking late shifts. Tyler begged me to quit, and I finally did. Even now, I still see those eyes when I close mine, cold, focused, and almost curious. Sometimes in a crowded street or at the grocery store, I'll spot a flash of a trench coat. My breath catches every time, because even though both brothers are serving life sentences now, I can't shake the feeling that someone else is still watching me. I never thought my brother could be capable of something evil. You grow up with someone, share the same blood, the same roof, the same stupid cereal box fights every morning, and you think you know them. You think family means safety, but I was wrong. When I look back now, it all started 15 years ago, right after our parents died. I was 11. My brother Lance was 31. Everyone loved him. Handsome, confident, the kind of man who always had a plan. He worked construction, owned a little farmhouse on the edge of town, and had that easy grin that made people trust him without question. After the funeral, he told everyone he'd take me in. Said he'd raise me right. Give me a good life. Mom's sister hesitated, but Lance could talk anyone into anything. He's my little brother, he said, laying a hand on my shoulder. He's all I've got left. I'll make sure he's taken care of. At 11, I believed him. He looked like a hero stepping up when no one else did. But the moment we reached his farmhouse, something felt wrong. From the outside, it was picture perfect. White porch, wide fields, a red barn behind the house. Inside, though, it felt hollow, too still, as if the place were holding its breath. There were locks on every door, heavy metal latches, even on the basement side. The air smelled of damp wood and iron, like old blood and rain. I told myself it was just the country. Just my nerves. For a while, he seemed normal. He'd take me fishing, cook breakfast, help me with homework. But there were moments, tiny cracks that didn't fit. Nights he'd disappear. Sudden mood swings that left me walking on eggshells. Once I knocked on his door after hearing strange noises. He shouted so loud it made my chest seize. "You knock one more damn time and you'll regret it." I never knocked again. By the time I turned 14, Lance had gotten stranger. He started building something behind the barn. Said it was a storage shed. When I asked what for, he gave me that wide, unsettling smile. "You'll see soon." That grin still wakes me up sometimes. Then one night I woke to the sound of his truck on the gravel drive. I peeked through the curtain. He was dragging something from the back, something big wrapped in a tarp. It sagged and thudded as he pulled. He grunted, stumbled, then hauled it toward the shed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would shake the window pane. The next morning, he was in the kitchen flipping pancakes like nothing happened. "Sleep good, kiddo?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. From that day on, I watched him closer. Years passed. When I turned 18, I told him I wanted to go to college in town. He didn't fight it, just smiled that same fake grin and said, "Do what you gotta do. Just don't forget who raised you." I didn't forget. I also didn't forget what I saw that night. I built a new life. New friends, new job, new everything. But sometimes Lance would call out of nowhere. "Come visit sometime, little bro," he'd say, his voice too light, too rehearsed. "The farm's lonely without you." Every time, I felt that same unease crawl back under my skin. I kept my distance until one evening, sitting at the diner with my buddy Chris, who worked part-time with the sheriff's office, he said something that froze me mid-sip. "Hey, you remember that old farmhouse off County Road 19 near the river bend?" "Yeah," I said carefully. "Why?" He took a slow drink of coffee. "Sheriff says there have been reports of missing hikers out that way. Thought it was wild hogs, but the dogs can't find a damn thing." I felt the air drain from my lungs. "You mean near my brother's place?" Chris blinked. "Didn't know you had family out there." I stood up so fast my chair screeched. "Yeah, excuse me." And I left. A week later, I drove back to Lance's farm, not to reconnect, but because I needed to see. The long dirt road hadn't changed. The porch, the barn, even the crooked mailbox still read Rowan in fading paint. Everything looked the same. But the air felt colder now, like the land itself remembered things it shouldn't. Lance came out the moment he heard my engine rumble up the drive. "Well, look who finally remembered me," he called, laughing. His voice was rougher now, like gravel. He looked older. His beard patchy, his skin weathered. But his eyes, those eyes still had that gleam that made my stomach twist. "Been a while," I said, trying to sound casual. "Damn right it has," he replied, clapping my shoulder hard enough to sting. "Come on in. I'll make some coffee." Inside, the farmhouse was even emptier than I remembered. No photos, no clutter, no warmth. Just pale walls, the smell of damp wood, and the faint hum of the fridge. The silence seemed to stretch between us as he filled 2 chipped mugs. As he poured, I glanced out the kitchen window. The shed stood there, different now, bigger. There was a new padlock on the door and a faint light flickering inside. "What's that?" I asked, forcing my tone to stay light. He didn't even look. "Storage. For what?" He smiled, that same thin-lipped smile I'd seen too many times before. "You always were curious, huh?" I tried to keep the conversation normal after that. Asked about work, the weather, anything, but my mind kept circling back. The shed, the tarp, the smell. Later, when he excused himself to use the bathroom, I moved fast. My heart hammered as I slipped out the back door, boots crunching on gravel. I went straight for the shed, the cold air biting my hands as I pulled out the small lockpick set I'd brought just in case. It took a few shaky tries before I heard the click. The moment I opened the door, the stench hit me. Rot, metal, bleach. It was thick enough to taste. I covered my nose and stepped inside. Shelves lined the walls. Old shoes, torn clothing, duffel bags caked in dirt. At the back, under a harsh work light, stood a table fitted with restraints. And then I saw the folder. It sat open beside the table. Papers spilling out, photos of missing people, newspaper clippings, dates, names written in Lance's handwriting. I didn't even hear him behind me until I heard his voice, low and calm. "You shouldn't have done that, kid." I spun around. He stood in the doorway holding a crowbar, his eyes like cold stone. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice cracking. "What the hell have you been doing, Lance?" He tilted his head, smirking. "Cleaning up the trash. You'd be surprised how many folks out there don't get missed." "Jesus Christ. Don't take the Lord's name, kid," he snapped. "You ain't innocent either. You broke in here." He swung the crowbar. I barely ducked. It smashed into the table, metal shrieking. I stumbled back, grabbed the nearest thing, a wrench, and swung as hard as I could. It cracked against his shoulder. He roared an inhuman sound and came at me again. We fought like wild animals. The table flipped. Chains clattered. Shelves crashed down around us. I didn't think. I just kept swinging until he stopped moving. I stood there shaking, chest heaving. The work light flickered, casting sickly shadows across his still body. Then something, a sound. A muffled voice, faint and desperate. It came from the corner. There was a freezer locked shut. My hands trembled as I forced it open. Inside was a woman, barely conscious, her lips blue. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Please," she gasped. "Help me." I lifted her out, my whole body trembling. She clung to me, sobbing. Together we stumbled into the night air, gasping for breath. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone as I dialed 911. When I looked back, the shed door hung open. The light still flickered. Lance lay motionless on the floor, his eyes open, staring straight at me. The cops came fast. They found everything, clothing, IDs, the photos. Evidence linking him to at least 6 missing people. The woman lived. They called me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I felt hollow, contaminated. Something inside me had cracked that night. I moved away soon after. Changed my number. Tried to forget. But sometimes when the world's too quiet, I still hear his voice. You'll see soon. And when I catch my reflection, there are moments, just a flicker, where I wonder if I really escaped him. Because lately I've been dreaming. Dreams of that shed. Dreams of that cold, flickering light. Dreams where I'm the one holding the crowbar. And when I wake up, I'm smiling. I still remember the smell of wet hay and gasoline that clung to that farmhouse. 15 years have passed, but every time it rains, it all comes back, thick, heavy, inescapable. I was 11 when my brother Travis came to take me for the summer. That's what he told my mom. She was working 2 jobs back then, waitressing at the diner and cleaning rooms at the Highway Motel. She barely slept, and she didn't have many choices. She hugged me hard at the door and said, "Travis is family, baby. You'll have fun out there. Fresh air. No city trouble." She smiled, tired and hopeful. If only she knew. The drive took almost 3 hours from our place in Kentucky. Travis's truck rattled constantly and smelled like stale smoke, motor oil, and something burnt into the seats. A big dent scarred the passenger door. He never looked at me much when he talked, just stared at the road and smirked at his own words. He always had a way of talking that made people feel small, jokes with a bite hidden in them. "Don't be looking so nervous, kid," he said, flicking his cigarette ash out the window. "Ain't like I'm taking you to a slaughterhouse." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that died almost as soon as it started. The farmhouse sat way off the main road, tucked behind rows of dying trees and tall, uncut grass that swayed like it was trying to hide something. At first glance it might have passed for peaceful, but the quiet was wrong. Too still, too heavy. Even the wind sounded like it avoided the place. When we pulled in, he gave me a quick tour. There was a faded red barn leaning like it might collapse and a small shed sitting too close to the woods. "Don't go messing around out there," he said, jerking his chin toward the shed. "Why not?" I asked. He paused, then smiled, a thin, empty smile. "Because I said so." That night I slept in a cramped upstairs room with a narrow bed and a cracked window pane that whistled whenever a breeze hit it. Moonlight spilled across the floor in broken shapes. Downstairs I could hear Travis rummaging through drawers, metal tools clinking, a door creaking open and shut. I told myself he was just cleaning up for the night, but my gut twisted even then. I knew something wasn't right. The first time I saw the posters, I didn't understand. We drove into town to buy feed or gas, and they were everywhere. At the grocery store entrance, on lampposts, tacked to bulletin boards. Missing, always kids. Faces frozen in bright smiles. Missing since June. Last seen near Willow Park. Travis would glance at them, chew his toothpick, and mutter, "World's a sick place, huh?" I nodded, wanting to believe he meant it, wanting to believe he wasn't part of that sickness. He had this big white van he claimed was for work. I never once saw him do a job, but sometimes he'd leave after dark and return just before dawn. In the mornings, the van smelled like wet earth and something sour underneath it, like rust, sweat, and fear. One night, I woke to the sound of crying, soft at first, then sharper, clearer. It wasn't Travis. It wasn't a TV, it was outside or beneath the floor. I crept downstairs, each step cold under my bare feet, and followed the sound to the basement door. It was locked, but the crying was right behind it. I pressed my ear against the wood. A little girl's voice, trembling and broken, whispered, "Please, I want to go home." My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move, didn't think, didn't breathe, and then Travis spoke behind me. "What are you doing, kid?" His voice was calm, too calm. I spun around. I heard something," I whispered. He stared at me in silence before that dead smile returned. "You hear a lot of things in the country," he said. "Best not to go poking around." A few days later, he said he needed help with a project. He handed me a shovel and pointed behind the barn. "Dig there." I didn't ask questions. The sun was brutal, the ground hard as stone, dirt caked under my nails and sweat stung my eyes. "How deep?" I finally asked, my arms burning. Travis leaned on his shovel, squinting up at the sky. "Deep enough to forget." That night, I didn't sleep at all. The crying came back, but there were two voices this time. And then I heard a boy, about my age, pleading through the floorboards. "Please, mister, don't hurt me." I pressed my hands over my ears, shut my eyes, and prayed for morning, praying for anything that could drown out the truth I was too terrified to face. A few days later, Travis left early in the morning, saying he had to run an errand. I stood on the porch and watched the white van rumble down the long dirt road until it became a blur of dust and sunlight. When it finally disappeared, I went back inside, my heartbeat tapping against my ribs. I knew where he kept the key. I'd seen him hide it more than once. I pulled up the loose floorboard in the hallway and my hand closed around the cold metal. When I unlocked the basement door, the smell punched me in the face, wet soil, sweat, rot, and something sharp underneath it. A single yellow bulb flickered overhead, throwing trembling shadows across the concrete floor. That's when I saw them. 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, their wrists tied, their cheeks streaked with tears, their eyes swollen and terrified. When they saw me, the girl's voice cracked. "Please, please help us." For a second, I wanted to run back up the stairs and slam the door, but I didn't. I dropped to my knees and untied them, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely work the knots. "Go," I whispered, glancing toward the steps. "Out the back door. Run through the woods. Don't stop until you hit the highway. You understand?" They nodded fast, desperate for hope. As the last boy scrambled to his feet, he grabbed my arm. "Come with us," he pleaded. I shook my head. "He'll find me if I go. Just run." They bolted barefoot into the night, and I heard twigs snapping, brush crackling, breathless footsteps fading into the dark. For the first time in weeks, air filled my lungs without burning. I thought they were free. I thought I had time. But Travis had already come back. He was in the kitchen. He must have seen them through the window, running for their lives. "What the hell?" he roared, snatching his gun off the counter. He tore outside, screaming after them, firing into the trees. One shot, then another. The echoes bounced through the woods until they vanished. I chased after him, praying those kids were faster than his bullets. And they were. They disappeared into the dark and didn't look back. When he turned around, his face was blood red with rage. I braced myself for the blow, for the gun to swing my way. But he didn't hit me. He didn't scream. He just stared, breathing hard, expression eerily calm. "Don't worry, kid," he said quietly. "Plenty more out there." That was the moment I understood. He wasn't ever going to stop. Not unless someone stopped him. The next morning, I woke to sirens. Loud. Close. I stumbled to the window and saw police cars barreling down the dirt road, lights flashing through the trees in shards of blue and red. They screeched to a halt in front of the house. Doors slammed. Voices shouted, "State police! Come out with your hands up!" I stepped outside slowly, shaking. A tall officer with gray hair looked down at me. "Son, are you one of the kids he took?" My throat felt like it was closing. I'm his brother," I managed. Shock rippled across their faces. I told them everything. The kids, the basement, the digging behind the barn. I could tell they didn't fully believe me until I led them to the dirt. When they sank their shovels in, the ground gave way easily. The looks on their faces when they saw what was buried there, those looks still haunt me. I broke down, sobbing until my whole body shook. I cried for the children they'd never save. I cried for Travis, for the brother who used to lift me onto his shoulders, who used to sneak me candy and whisper secrets in the dark, and for the monster he had become. They took me into town, questioned me, fed me, gave me a blanket. My mom arrived hours later. The second she saw me, she wrapped me up and wouldn't let go. "Oh, baby," she kept repeating, voice cracked and broken. "Oh, baby. Oh, baby." They found Travis that same night at our mom's house. He'd shown up acting like nothing had happened. Asked her if he could stay for a few days. She said yes, told him to shower, said she'd make coffee. Then she called my dad. They called the police. By the time Travis stepped out of the bathroom, they were waiting with guns raised. At the trial, Travis never once looked at me. Not once. They said he confessed later. Said he was cleansing the world of lost souls, that he was doing God's work, that the kids were broken things that needed peace. Hearing it made me sick. He was sentenced to death. When I found out, I didn't feel relief, just emptiness. Hollow and cold. He sent me one letter from prison. Just one. It read, "You did what you had to do, kid. Guess you turned out better than me." I folded it up and put it away. I never wrote back. Now it's been 15 years. I live far from Kentucky, far from rusted barns and lonely fields. I don't talk about any of it. Most people wouldn't believe me, and the few who might, I don't want them to carry it. But sometimes when I smell gasoline or pass an old barn on a back road, I'm 11 again, standing in that basement doorway, listening to children cry. Last summer, I went back. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed proof that it was real. Maybe I wanted to face the ghost of that place. The farmhouse still stood, broken and sagging, windows shattered, paint peeled down to gray bone. The barn had collapsed into a heap of splinters. Wildflowers and tall grass swallowed everything. I walked to the back field where the holes once were. Now it was just earth, smooth, green, and different, as if the land itself wanted to forget. But when the wind moved, I heard it, faint, fragile, crying. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe some things never stop screaming. I grew up in a small town called Willow Creek, tucked deep in the Appalachian foothills of eastern Tennessee. It wasn't the kind of place you'd see on a highway sign unless you'd already passed it. We had one blinking yellow light, 2 diners, a single gas station, and a grocery store that closed every Sunday after church. Everyone knew everyone and everyone's business. If you sneezed on your porch, someone down the road would call out, "Bless you," before you even found a tissue. Life there used to feel peaceful, simple. Summer nights smelled like honeysuckle and diesel. Kids ran barefoot in the dirt, fireflies blinking around them. Folks left their doors unlocked. Nobody thought twice about it. But that all changed the year my brother came home. His name was Luke Tanner, 3 years older than me. He joined the Army right after high school. Said he wanted to see the world, though everyone knew he mostly just wanted out of Willow Creek. My mom said he had wanderer's blood. My dad said he just didn't like to listen. For a while, he sent letters. Short ones. Doing good. Tell Mom I'm fine. Then they stopped. We figured maybe he got busy, that life just moved on. Until one afternoon the phone rang. It was the base. They said Luke had been discharged early. Their words were clipped, official. Medical evaluation. Psychological concerns. When he showed up at our door that winter, we barely recognized him. He was thinner, skin pale, eyes sharp and restless. He didn't hug Mom, didn't say he'd missed us. Just gave a slow nod and murmured, "It's quiet here." He moved back into his old room beside mine, but the house didn't feel like home anymore. He barely ate, barely slept. Sometimes I'd hear him pacing the hallway at 2 a.m, whispering to himself. Other nights he'd sit out on the porch for hours, staring into the woods like he was waiting for something to come out. Mom kept saying it was PTSD, that he just needed time to heal. "You don't come back from war the same," she told Dad. But healing never came. He only unraveled. One night I came downstairs for a glass of water and found him sitting in the dark kitchen, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. His eyes looked hollow. "You can't sleep either?" I asked. He didn't move. "You ever notice how loud the silence gets here?" He said finally. "What do you mean?" I asked, frowning. He flicked ash into an old mug. "Out there, when everything stops moving, you can hear them whisper." "Them who?" I tried to joke. He looked up, face ghostly in the dim light. "The ones that live between the trees." I forced a laugh. "You mean animals?" He shook his head slowly. "No, people." Then he stood barefoot and walked out the back door into the tree line. I froze, heart thudding, listening to the screen door creak shut behind him. When he came back nearly an hour later, his feet were muddy, his shirt torn, and his eyes looked different. "They were close tonight," he whispered, and went upstairs without another word. After that, he stopped pretending to be normal. He spent his days carving little wooden figures at the kitchen table, soldiers, hunters, strange animal shapes. Once I saw him carving something bound to a chair. When I asked who it was, he smiled faintly. "That one's me." At night, he'd stand in the yard with a flashlight, sweeping the beam across the trees, muttering, "They're moving again." I heard him once say, "They don't like the lights." The neighbors started talking. Mrs. Henson across the street told Dad she saw Luke standing in her driveway at 3 a.m., staring at her house. When Dad confronted him, Luke said, "I was making sure they hadn't gotten to her." Then came October 12, 2007, a night I'll never forget. The air smelled like rain. My high school team had just lost the homecoming game and I got home late. Mom was asleep. Dad was watching TV. Luke was out back, sitting on the tailgate of his truck, eyes locked on the woods. "Hey," I said softly. "You okay?" He didn't answer right away. Then, almost to himself, he said, "You ever feel like something's using you for a purpose you don't understand?" "What?" I asked. He turned toward me, voice flat. "They talk to me, Sam." "Who talks to you?" "The ones out there," he said, nodding toward the woods. "They said there's rot in this family. Said it's time to cut it out. Luke, maybe you should come inside. It's cold." He smiled faintly. "No, they said it has to be tonight." I didn't understand what he meant until I woke to Mom's scream. It ripped through the house, raw and terrified. I shot out of bed, heart pounding, and ran down the hall. Something crashed in the kitchen, a man's grunt, a sharp cry. When I turned the corner, everything stopped. Dad was sprawled on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. Luke stood over him, gripping our old hunting knife, the one that used to hang above the fireplace. His shirt was spattered with red. "Luke!" I shouted. "What the hell are you doing?" He looked up, eyes wild. "They said he's not who he looks like." "That's Dad," I screamed. "He's one of them," Luke hissed. "They're inside him." Mom was pressed against the wall, sobbing. "Luke, please put the knife down." "Please, baby." He stepped closer to her. "You don't understand, Ma. They wear people like skin." Dad groaned, trying to push himself up. Luke kicked him hard in the ribs and, "Stop it!" I screamed, grabbing a pan from the counter. He turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, there was nothing human in his face. "They said you might fight back," he whispered. "Said you'd try to stop me," he lunged. I swung the pan with everything I had. The metal cracked against his shoulder, sending the knife spinning across the floor. He staggered back, dazed, eyes wild. "Mom, run!" I yelled. She bolted for the back door, sobbing his name. I grabbed Dad under the arms and dragged him toward the hallway, my hands slick and warm with blood. Luke pushed himself upright, teeth bared. "You can't stop it, Sam," he rasped. "You can't stop what's coming." Then, before I could move, he turned and sprinted straight out the front door, vanishing into the woods. They found him 2 days later near the creek, sitting in the mud, humming to himself. When the deputies called out, he smiled faintly. "They told me it's done now," he said. "They said you'd come." He didn't fight as they cuffed him, just kept humming that same tune. Dad survived, but he was never the same. Head trauma, the doctor said, lucky to be alive. Mom quit her job at the diner, stopped talking much, just stared at the woods from the kitchen window for hours. Luke was sent to Cumberland State Hospital. The doctors called it a severe case of paranoid schizophrenia, maybe triggered by combat. They said he'd built a belief system around the voices in the woods. He's not evil, they told us. Just broken. But broken didn't explain what came later. I left Willow Creek a few years after that, got married, had a son, tried to build a life far from those trees. Tried to forget. Then last summer my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Samuel Tanner?" A woman asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Dr. Hayes from Cumberland State. I'm calling about your brother." My throat tightened. "What about him?" A pause. "He's gone. Escaped during a transfer. 2 staff members were injured. We've alerted local law enforcement. They searched for weeks, found nothing. Then Mom started getting strange phone calls. Static mostly, then breathing. Once she swore she heard a whisper. They're in the woods again. 2 months ago I drove back to Willow Creek. Mom's heart was failing and she wanted me there. The old house looked exactly the same. Chipped paint, broken porch light, the smell of pine and damp earth. When I walked into her room, she looked fragile, but her eyes were steady. "I've been dreaming about Luke," she said. I sat beside her. "They're just dreams, Ma." She shook her head slowly. "He's out there, Sammy. I hear him talking to the trees." I tried to smile. "It's just the wind." "No," she whispered. "He said he's coming home." That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked with every gust of wind. Around 2 a.m. I heard gravel crunching outside, slow, deliberate. I peered through the blinds. Someone stood near the tree line, tall, barefoot, wearing a torn army jacket. My stomach dropped. "Luke," I breathed. He tilted his head like he heard me and smiled, wrong, familiar. I reached for my phone. No service. Panic crawled through me. I ran to Mom's room, empty. The bed was neatly made. The back door was open. Cold air poured in. "Mom?" I called out. From the woods came a sound, soft, almost tender. "Sam." I froze. That voice. It was him. Branches snapped in the dark. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. The beam cut through the trees, landing on something swaying from a low branch. A wooden carving. Then another. And another. Dozens of them, soldiers, men, figures tied to chairs. In the center hung one that looked exactly like me. Footsteps behind me. I turned and a hand clamped over my mouth. Hot breath brushed my ear. "Shh," he whispered. "They're listening." Luke's voice. He smelled of wet soil, blood, and rain. His eyes gleamed in the beam. "They told me the cycle ain't done," he murmured. "Said it's your turn now." My voice broke. "Where's Mom?" He smiled, slow and sad. "She's with them." I slammed my elbow into his ribs, tore free, and ran, branches whipping my face, lungs burning. Behind me his voice followed, sing-song and fading. "You can't run from them, Sam. You're one of us now." I burst through the back door, locked it, and grabbed the old landline. My hand shook as I called the sheriff. Within 15 minutes, sirens wailed through the valley. They searched the woods until sunrise. Found nothing. No Luke, no Mom, just the carvings. It's been 7 months. The sheriff still calls sometimes, asks if I've heard anything strange. I always say no. But at night when the wind moves through the trees behind my house, I hear it. Whispers, faint but clear. Sometimes my name. Sometimes laughter. Sometimes the scrape of a knife against wood. Last night I found something on my porch. A small wooden carving of me holding a knife. I grew up in the Queens borough of New York City, in a tiny, suffocating apartment with my mom and my older brother Elliot. The walls were paper thin, You could hear every argument, every creak of the floorboards, every muffled laugh through the plaster. The hallway always smelled like fried rice, burnt oil, or whatever the neighbors were heating up that night. I was 14 when things started to feel wrong. Elliot was 20, tall, wiry, with piercing gray eyes that seemed to see through people instead of at them. Everyone liked him. Teachers, neighbors, strangers on the street. They'd smile when he passed. But me, I never felt comfortable around him. There was something off about the way he smiled, like he was pretending to remember how. It started one late summer evening. I was lying on the couch, scrolling through my phone, the fan buzzing against the humid air, when I heard him whispering in the kitchen. His voice was low, tense. Not yet. Not him, he doesn't know. I froze. My skin prickled. "Elliot?" I called out, trying to sound casual, but my voice shook anyway. No answer. I walked closer, my bare feet sticking slightly to the kitchen linoleum. The single bulb above the sink flickered, and that's when I saw him. He was standing by the counter, his forearm marked with faint, jagged scratches. A small paring knife lay beside him. He looked up slowly, his expression calm, too calm. "Relax," he said, his tone steady, eerily normal. "It's nothing, just work stuff." "Work?" I repeated, though he didn't even have a job. He gave a half smile, almost pitying. "Don't worry about it, kid." I nodded like I believed him and backed out of the room, but my heart wouldn't slow down. Something inside him had shifted, and I knew it. The next few weeks were strange. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find him standing at the foot of my bed, still as a statue. "Elliot," I'd whisper, barely breathing. "What are you doing?" He'd smile, slow and quiet. "Just checking. You sleep so lightly." Then he'd turn and leave like it was nothing, but I'd lie awake until sunrise, too afraid to move. Even my friends started noticing. When Jordan and I walked through Jackson Heights after school, Elliot would follow a few paces behind, his gaze darting to every doorway, every passing car. Sometimes his lips twitched like he was suppressing a laugh at some private thought. One night I was texting Jordan about a history assignment when Elliot appeared behind me. Without warning, he snatched the phone from my hands. "Karen, what's this?" he asked. "Homework," I said, my voice small. "Homework, huh?" He leaned in so close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my neck. "You don't hide anything from me, right?" I swallowed hard and shook my head. "Good," he murmured, then handed the phone back and walked away, whistling softly. By October, things had gotten worse. Mom was pulling double shifts at the hospital, so it was just me and Elliot most nights. The apartment felt colder, heavier. One evening I heard noises coming from the basement, scratching, soft growls, and something that sounded almost like crying. My pulse jumped. I grabbed a flashlight and crept down the narrow stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The air smelled of old paint, mildew, and damp concrete. In the far corner, hidden behind stacked boxes, I saw it. A small space lit by flickering candlelight. A crude shrine, maybe? I couldn't tell. The concrete floor was scrawled over in red marker. "They won't hurt me." Not him, not her. The words looped and tangled over each other like a desperate chant. "Elliot?" I whispered. He stepped out of the shadows, holding the same small knife from before. His eyes were wide, not angry, just curious, like he was studying something fragile. "You don't understand," he said softly. "They need to know. They need to see." I ran. I didn't even remember turning or climbing the stairs, just the pounding of my feet and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I locked my bedroom door and sat against it, shaking, listening for footsteps that didn't come. My hands were trembling as I texted Jordan everything, every word, every noise, every look. But even as I hit send, I knew how it sounded. I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. The next day at school, Elliot was normal, perfectly, impossibly normal. He laughed with his friends in the courtyard, joked with teachers, and even helped a classmate pick up her books in the hallway like some kind of model brother. When he saw me by the lockers, he smiled, bright, easy, and waved as if nothing had ever happened. My stomach turned. I wanted to tell Mom, I really did. But every time I imagined her face, imagined the way Elliot might look at me afterward, I froze. There was something in his eyes that promised, no, warned me what would happen if I spoke. In the weeks that followed, his darkness started to leak out in small, deliberate ways. Notes appeared where they shouldn't, folded inside my locker, slipped beneath my bedroom door, tucked between the pages of my homework notebook. They were written in his neat, steady handwriting, the tone almost playful, like inside jokes only he understood. Don't tell anyone. I'll be mad. You like your friends? I don't. Play your part or I'll play mine. Each one felt heavier than the last. Then came the ones that made my skin crawl. Photos with knives drawn over faces, mirrors scratched with words like, I see you, scrawled across their cracked surfaces. Once I found a photo of my own face with a black X over my eyes. I didn't sleep that night. One Friday, Jordan came over to hang out. We were trying to lose ourselves in a video game, the room filled with that faint blue glow from the TV. For a while it almost felt normal again, until I saw the reflection of someone in the screen. Elliot stood in the doorway, silent. You two having fun? He asked, voice casual, too casual. Jordan froze, his fingers tightening around the controller. Yeah, I said quickly, my throat dry. Elliot smiled, but it wasn't warmth, it was something serrated. Good. Keep having fun, until I say otherwise. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. By winter, the apartment felt smaller, colder. Every corner seemed to hum with his presence. I stopped inviting anyone over. I stopped answering texts. It felt like every time I looked up, Elliot was already watching, eyes half-lidded, mouth twitching like he was trying not to laugh. Somehow, he always knew things he shouldn't. If I went to the store, he'd mention it. If I talked to Jordan, I'd get a text later. I saw you with him. She's lying. Don't trust her. Then one night I woke to find something new on my desk. A knife, clean, silver sharp. Beside it, a note. You should have listened. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold my phone. I called Mom. My voice broke as I told her everything. She came home within the hour, her hair still pinned from her shift at the hospital, her face pale and tired. She confronted him right there in the living room. Elliot, what is this? She demanded, holding the note. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, small, serene. I'm protecting us, he said simply. From what? She whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The way he looked at me made my stomach turn. Then came March. The air was still cold enough to sting. Mom had gone out to pick up groceries, and for once the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I should have known. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. Elliot? I called, trying to steady my voice. He didn't answer. He just followed me down to the basement again. The same flickering bulb. The same smell of damp concrete. This time I didn't run. Stop, I said, my voice cracking. Elliot, this isn't normal. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. Normal? He echoed softly, almost amused. You think the world's safe? You think people are safe? He took a step closer, the knife glinting faintly in his hand. I'm making it safe. For us? For us? I shouted. You're scaring me. He laughed then, low and quiet. Good, you should be. Before I could move, the doorbell rang. The sound cut through everything like a blade. Elliot froze. The neighbor's voice called faintly from upstairs, checking in because Mom hadn't been home. For a moment, the tension snapped. He blinked, looked down at the knife and set it gently on the table. Then he smiled again like nothing had happened. We never talked about that night. Ever. A week later, Mom made the decision. Elliot was going away. A specialized facility, they said. Somewhere safe. He fought it at first, pacing, muttering, refusing to pack, but in the end he left quietly. Years passed. I don't see him, but I feel him. Sometimes when I walk down the hallway at night, I swear I catch a flicker of movement. His shadow, his scent, the faint click of a knife being set down. And every few months a text comes from an unknown number. Just one word. Watch. I grew up in a small town in Missouri, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where gossip spread faster than wind through cornfields, and nothing ever really happened. At least that's what outsiders like to believe. My name's Kyle, and if you asked anyone around town about my family, they'd tell you my brother Jake was the golden boy. Charming, confident, the kind of guy people just liked. But behind closed doors, when the smiles faded and the lights went dim, he was something else entirely. Jake was 6 years older than me. From the time I could walk, I wanted to be like him. He'd fix my bike chain, sneak me candy when Mom wasn't looking, tell jokes until I couldn't breathe from laughing. But when it was just us, when no one else was around, that same grin, the one that made everyone trust him, would twist into something sharper. Something that made my stomach tighten. Mom used to say, "Jake's just protective. That's what big brothers do." But I knew better. When Dad left, Jake became the man of the house. He was 20. I was 14. Mom worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on. That first summer without Dad, Jake started bringing home random things. An old wrench set, a baseball glove, a pair of muddy boots. I'd ask where he got them, and he'd ruffle my hair and say, "Don't worry about it, little man. People leave crap lying around. Waste not, want not." But it wasn't just junk, not all of it. One night I woke up to the rumble of his truck in the driveway. The clock said 2:30 a.m. I figured he'd been out drinking with his buddies again, but when I peeked through the curtain, I saw him heaving something from the bed of the truck. It was heavy, wrapped in a dark tarp. He dragged it behind the shed, boots sinking into the wet dirt. Then I heard a metallic clank, followed by a muffled groan. My breath caught. I didn't move, didn't even blink. The next morning, Jake stood at the stove flipping pancakes, humming off-key like nothing had happened. "Sleep good, kid?" he asked, flashing that same easy grin. I stared at him. My throat felt dry. "Yeah," I muttered. He held my gaze for a second too long, just long enough for me to understand that he knew I'd seen something. His eyes dared me to ask. I didn't, not then. Years went by. I moved out at 18, got a job with a construction crew, tried to start fresh, but the shadow of Jake never really left. He'd call sometimes, usually drunk, sometimes crying, mumbling things that didn't make sense. Then he'd disappear for months, until one night 2 years ago. It was a Friday, raining hard. I was watching TV when my phone buzzed. Jake. I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe guilt, maybe fear, made me swipe the call. "Hey, bro," he slurred, voice thick with whiskey. "You busy tonight?" "Not really," I said cautiously. "Why?" "Got something I need help with." "Nothing big. Just something in the garage I can't move alone." That old feeling returned, a cold, coiled dread sitting right in my chest. "Jake." "What is it?" He chuckled low. "You'll see when you get here. Don't be a pussy, Kyle, just come over." When I pulled up, the rain was pounding so hard it blurred the world beyond the windshield. The place looked worse than I remembered. Grass knee-high, a rusted truck half sunk in the mud, windows fogged from inside. I honked once. "No answer! Jake!" I shouted as I stepped out, my boots sloshing in the puddles. The front door creaked open. He stood there shirtless, pale, his eyes wide and red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days. "Hey, little man," he said, smiling too wide. "Glad you came." I forced a grin. "What's this about?" "Come on in. I'll show you." The moment I crossed the threshold, the smell hit me, thick, foul, like rotting meat and bleach. My stomach turned. Sheets were draped over furniture, duct taped to the walls for no reason I could see. The air felt heavy, damp with something that didn't belong. Jake led me toward the garage door. He stopped halfway, turning to face me. "Before we go in," he said quietly, "you gotta promise you won't freak out." My pulse hammered. "Jake, what the hell's in there?" He smiled, eyes glinting. "Just promise." I hesitated, reached for the doorknob. His hand shot out, slapping mine away, hard. I said, "Promise." "Fine," I snapped. "I promise." He nodded slowly, almost satisfied. "Good." He pulled the chain and the garage door screeched as it lifted, metal grinding like something alive and in pain. The smell hit me first, thick, putrid, unmistakable rot. It filled my nose, coated the back of my throat like oil. I gagged. Something in there had been dead for days. My flashlight cut a thin beam through the darkness. That's when I saw it, a single chair in the center of the room. A man was tied to it. His head hung low, his shirt soaked with blood. His face was swollen and purple, lips split, a gag shoved between his teeth. His chest moved shallowly, barely breathing. "What the hell, Jake?" I stumbled backward, my voice breaking. "What did you do?" Jake laughed, a low, shaky sound that made my stomach twist. He broke into Mom's place last week. Tried to take her purse. You believe that shit? My heart hammered so hard I could barely speak. You don't even live near Mom anymore. Jake's grin faded, replaced by something cold and focused. He was near her, though. I saw him follow her out of the diner. I had to protect her. You know how it is, Kyle. Untie him, I said, my voice trembling. We're calling the cops. Right now. He tilted his head, studying me like he was reading a stranger. Then that damned smile returned. Cops don't care, Kyle. They never did. You think they helped Dad? You think they helped me when he used to? He stopped, his voice shaking. They don't give a damn about people like us. Jake, I whispered. This isn't protecting anyone. You're going to kill him. Jake's stare went blank for a moment, then sharpened again. He walked behind the man, reaching for something on the workbench. A knife. Its blade caught the dim light. Then maybe that's what needs to happen, he said quietly. I stepped forward, my pulse roaring in my ears. Jake, don't. I swear to God, if you... He spun, eyes blazing. You'll what? Call the cops on your own brother? You owe me, Kyle, after everything I've done for you, after everything I protected you from... I didn't ask you to protect me, I shouted. You've been scaring me my whole damn life. For just a second, I saw something flicker in his face, hurt, maybe regret. Then it was gone, replaced by that smile. That awful, hollow smile. You don't get it, he said softly, turning the knife toward the man. You never will. I didn't think. I just moved. My hand grabbed the first thing it found, a wrench, and I swung. The metal connected with his arm. The knife clattered to the concrete. He roared, charging at me like a bull. We crashed into the tool rack. Wrenches, hammers, nails spilled across the floor, the clang echoing like thunder. Stop, Jake, I screamed, shoving at him. He was stronger. Always had been. His hands closed around my throat, squeezing hard. His eyes were wild, unfocused, filled with something feral. You think you're better than me? He growled. You think you're the good one? My vision blurred. The edges of the world dimmed. I clawed at his wrist, searching blindly until my fingers brushed cold metal. The wrench. I gripped it and swung upward hard. The sound was wet and final. His weight slumped. Then silence. I lay there gasping, every breath sharp and burning. Rain hammered against the roof, a steady, deafening rhythm. Across the room, the man in the chair moaned weakly. He was still alive. Barely. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone as I dialed 911. When the police came, they found more than just that man. They found photos in Jake's basement, dozens of them. Faces I didn't recognize. People missing from nearby towns. And a few I did recognize. From old news reports, stories Mom used to cry over. Jake didn't die that night. He's in a state hospital now. They said he's schizophrenic. That he's been living in delusions for years, convinced he was protecting people from something only he could see. But sometimes I wonder. Because every now and then my phone rings late at night. There's just static on the line, and then a whisper. Lil man. It's his voice. And when I look out my window after, I swear I see it. A truck parked across the street. Old, rusted, headlights off. Just sitting there waiting. I always believed family was supposed to be your safest place. Turns out blood doesn't guarantee safety. It can hide the very thing you should fear. It started small, subtle, almost invisible, and by the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. I grew up in a quiet little town in Oregon called Ashgrove, the kind of place where people waved at stop signs and gossiped over pie at the diner. I was 25 when Mom remarried about a year after Dad died in a car accident. She'd met Rick, a kind-eyed man with laugh lines and a solid contracting business. He had a son about my age, Caleb, who'd just come back from working in Alaska. I still remember the day we met. October, gray skies, the smell of wet pine drifting through the open window. Mom was cooking chili, humming an old country song. When Caleb stepped through the door, she looked oddly relieved, like she'd been worried he might not come. Caleb, honey, this is my daughter Emma, she said, smiling. He gave a half smile, the kind people wear when they're measuring you. Not shy, not bold, just quietly observant. His hair was cropped short, shirt neatly buttoned, hands rough and scarred like they'd lived through real work. "Hey," he said in a low, even voice. "Good to finally meet you." "You too," I replied. He wasn't what I'd expected. Not bad, just different. There was a stillness about him, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. At first, things felt normal. Mom was the happiest I'd seen her in years. Rick treated her gently. Caleb was polite, though distant. He spent most of his time in the garage or walking down the long dirt road that cut through the woods. I worked nights at a diner, saving up for nursing school, so I didn't see much of him. But when I did, he'd ask the same questions about my friends, my shift schedule, whether I drove home alone. At first, it felt like harmless small talk. Then, slowly, it didn't. It was a Tuesday night in November. I got home late, rain hammering the windshield, headlights slicing through the mist as I pulled into the driveway. The house was mostly dark, except for the warm spill of light from the kitchen. Mom and Rick were asleep. I hung up my coat and turned to head upstairs, then froze. Caleb was sitting at the table. No phone, no book. Just a half-empty glass of milk in front of him. "Hey," I said, startled. "Didn't know anyone was up." He looked up, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "Couldn't sleep. You work too late, you know that?" "Yeah, tell me about it," I said with a tired laugh. "You walked to your car alone?" His tone shifted, flat, curious, too casual. "Oh, yeah. There are lights in the parking lot." He nodded, eyes fixed on his glass. "Not safe for a girl like you." There was no edge in his voice, no threat, but something about the softness made my skin prickle. I swallowed, forcing a small smile. "Good night, Caleb." Then I went upstairs, heart thudding. I didn't sleep much that night. A few days later, Mom and Rick left for a weekend trip to the coast, leaving me and Caleb to watch the house. She'd made lasagna, left a sticky note on the fridge with a heart next to my name. Saturday night, I came home around midnight. The house was dark except for the pale flicker of the TV in the living room. Caleb sat on the couch staring down at something in his hands. I froze when I saw it, my hairbrush. He didn't look up right away. Or maybe he did and wanted me to think he hadn't. My stomach twisted. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice thin. He lifted his eyes slowly. "You left this in the bathroom." "But I hadn't, I kept it in my room." "Oh," I said quietly. "Thanks." That half-smile crept across his face again. He set the brush on the table and stood. "You should lock your door, Emma. A lot of weird people out there." I forced a nervous laugh. "You mean in here?" He chuckled softly like it was some private joke. "Wouldn't that be something?" Then he brushed past me, his shoulder grazing mine. The contact made my skin crawl. The next morning I told Mom what happened. She laughed. "Oh, honey, Caleb's harmless. He's just awkward. Don't read into it," but I couldn't shake it. That night I locked my bedroom door. Then came the sounds. Faint footsteps in the hallway. The slow creak of the floor near my door. The knob jiggling once, twice, then silence. I'd sit up, clutching my phone, every nerve awake, waiting. Nothing ever followed. But that soft turn of metal haunted me long after the house went still. One night I decided I'd had enough. I stayed awake, lights off, eyes on the door. Around 2:30 a.m. I heard it, the whisper of a foot against the floorboard. My heart hammered. The doorknob turned once, slowly, then stopped. From the other side, a voice murmured, "You awake?" It was Caleb. I didn't answer. After a few seconds, his footsteps drifted away. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened, pouring coffee, asking if I wanted toast. I felt sick just hearing his voice. 2 weeks later, I came home early from work. The house was quiet, too quiet. Mom and Rick were at a dinner party, and Caleb was supposed to be at a friend's. I headed upstairs, humming softly to fill the silence. But when I opened my bedroom door, the sound caught in my throat. My desk drawers were pulled open. My clothes shifted, and on my pillow, resting neatly like it had been placed there with care, was my necklace. The one I'd lost months ago. A chill rippled through me. My hand trembled as I backed out, grabbing my phone to call Mom. No answer. I snatched my bag and keys, ready to leave. That's when I heard the front door open. "Emma," Caleb's voice called. My breath hitched. "Hey," I said, forcing steadiness into my tone. "You scared me. I thought you were out." He stepped into view, that same calm smile tugging at his lips. "Forgot my jacket," he said. His eyes moved over me, assessing. "Something wrong?" No, I lied, clutching my keys. Just tired. He tilted his head, studying me. You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost. I tried to laugh. I'm fine. He stepped closer. You know, you shouldn't be scared of me. I'm not, I said too quickly. His smile faded. Then why do you lock your door at night? My stomach dropped. What? He gave a soft chuckle. I hear it. Every night. That little click. He mimed turning a lock. Makes a man feel unwelcome in his own home. I froze, gripping the key so tightly the edges bit into my palm. He leaned in slightly, voice low and shaky beneath its calm. You think I don't see how you look at me? Like I'm some kind of freak. You don't know me, Emma. I stepped back until my hand brushed the doorknob. I think I'll go to bed. He stepped aside, that smirk returning. Sweet dreams. That night I slept with the light on. When I woke, the window was open. The latch broken. I couldn't do it anymore. I told Mom I wanted to move out. She was upset, said I was overreacting, that Caleb was just struggling to adjust. But I'd already found a small apartment in town. I was leaving Sunday morning. Saturday night, my bags were packed. I locked my door like always and went to bed early. Sometime after 1, a faint scraping sound pulled me from sleep. My chest tightened as I looked toward the window. A shape was there, hands gripping the frame. Caleb, I whispered. He climbed through the broken latch as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Why are you leaving? He asked softly. Get out, I said, my voice shaking. You don't understand. I'm trying to protect you. His eyes were glassy, voice trembling beneath its calm. You think people out there care about you? They don't. You'll get hurt. I'm the only one who sees you. Get out of my room, Caleb, I shouted, backing away. He lunged. I screamed, grabbed my lamp, and swung. The base cracked against his shoulder and he stumbled. I bolted for the hall, but his hand caught my arm. Stop, he shouted. I'm not going to hurt you. He pinned me against the wall, breath hot on my cheek, eyes wild and pleading. I just want you safe, he whispered. I kneed him hard in the stomach. He gasped, loosening his grip, and I ran. Down the stairs, barefoot, heart slamming against my ribs. I fumbled at the lock, hands slick with sweat when his voice came again, cracked, almost breaking. Emma, please, don't make me do this. I twisted free, flung the door open, and ran into the cold night. The gravel tore at my feet, but I didn't stop. I screamed for help, waving desperately when headlights appeared around the bend. Mr. Jensen's truck. He braked hard, jumped out, phone already in his hand. Caleb stood on the porch staring, his face blank. When the police came, he was gone. They searched the woods for 2 days, found his footprints near the creek, but nothing else. Mom was hysterical, certain he'd run away out of guilt. But I knew better. He hadn't run. He was waiting. A month later, I moved to Portland. Therapy, new number. For a while, it felt like I was rebuilding my life. Then one morning, I found something under my apartment door, a folded piece of paper. In neat handwriting, it read, "You forgot your brush again." Taped beside it was a single strand of my hair. I don't use Facebook anymore. Don't post pictures. And every time I walk home, I glance behind me. Because somewhere out there, Caleb is still watching, still smiling, that quiet, patient smile. And he knows exactly where I live. I still remember the day the calls began. It's been over 40 years, but that first one still loops in my head like a warped record I can't turn off. I was sitting in the kitchen of our small house in Fair Grove, Missouri, watching steam rise off my coffee cup. The January air pressed against the windows, cold and silent. It had been one of the hardest weeks of my life. My daughter Hannah had been missing for 7 days. The police said they were doing everything they could, but I could hear it in their voices. They were running out of leads. My husband Robert was still out there, combing back roads and dusty gas stations, knocking on doors in towns 30 miles away. He couldn't stop moving. I, on the other hand, couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I stayed close to the phone as if the ringing itself might save her. And then, it rang. My grandson Caleb was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, eyes glazed at the cartoons flickering across the TV. The volume was turned down low, barely a whisper. When the phone rang, his head snapped toward me, hope flashing in his face the way it always did. like maybe this time it would be his mom. I picked up before the second ring finished.
Hello?
There was nothing for a long moment but static and the faint hum of the line. Then a man's voice, deep, rough, deliberate. "I have your daughter." For a second, my whole body went hollow. I pressed the receiver harder to my ear. What did you say? Who is this? "She's with me," he said. "Don't call the cops again. You call them and she dies." There was a sound behind him, a wet, uneven breath too close to the phone. Then the line clicked dead. I don't remember hanging up. I just remember screaming Robert's name, though he wasn't home, and Caleb's small voice breaking into sobs from the living room. That was the first call. The first of many. Every Wednesday after that, like clockwork, the phone would ring. Always the same voice. Sometimes he said, "She's with me." Other times, "I've already killed her." And once, in a low whisper that still freezes my blood, "You'll see me soon." The police tried to trace the calls. But it was 1981. Nothing was quick, nothing was easy. Most of the time he hung up before they could get a fix. They said maybe it was just a cruel prank. But I knew better. A mother knows when her child is in danger. Hannah was 26 when she disappeared. A single mother, hard-working, gentle with everyone. She split her days between the real estate office in town and the diner off Main Street. Never complained, not once. Her life revolved around Caleb. But there was something else, something we'd ignored for too long. My son, Michael, Hannah's older brother. After my parents died, I took both kids in. Michael was 17, Hannah 12. He was quiet, polite enough, but there was always something about the way he looked at her. Not like a brother should. Once when Hannah was 16, I overheard them arguing in the hallway. "Why'd you wear that?" Michael's voice was sharp, accusing. "Because I like it," she shot back, defensive. "It's too short. You look like one of those girls from town." "Mike, I can wear what I want." There was a crack. His hand slammed the wall so hard the picture frame fell. "Don't talk back to me," he hissed. I came rushing out, shouting his name. "Enough, Michael. Go to your room." He turned to me slowly, and the look he gave before walking away, it made something cold settle deep in my stomach. As the years went on, Michael unraveled. He'd lose jobs, disappear for weeks, come crawling back with apologies and tears and stories that never quite made sense. Robert said he wasn't right in the head. I wanted to believe he'd change, that he'd outgrow whatever was festering in him. But after Hannah had Caleb, it was like something broke inside him completely. He started showing up at her place unannounced, sometimes late at night. "She's my sister," he told me once when I confronted him. "I just want to make sure she's okay." But Hannah didn't feel safe. One night, her voice trembled over the phone. "He watches me, Mom. I'll be doing dishes and look up and he's just there outside. He's not normal anymore." I told her to change her locks, and she did. But you can't change family. It started with the phone calls. "Is this Hannah Price?" "Yes," she'd said cautiously. "Who's this?" "I'm your lover." She laughed then, nervous, dismissive. "You've got the wrong number." But a few days later, he called again. "You hung up on me last time," the same low, deliberate voice said. "That wasn't very nice." "Listen," Hannah snapped, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Whoever you are, stop calling me. I'm not interested." "I told you I loved you, Hannah," he said softly. "And you insulted me. I don't take that well." The next morning, she found a dead bird on her car hood, its neck twisted, feathers matted with blood. That evening, she came over trembling, clutching Caleb so tight the boy whimpered. Robert and I sat her down, made her tea. "Report it," Robert said firmly. And she did. But the police just shrugged. "Could be a prank," one of them said, barely looking up from his clipboard. A few nights later, the phone rang again. Hannah answered. "Go outside," the voice murmured. "I left you something, sweetheart." She froze. Her hand shook as she handed the receiver to Robert. Without a word, he grabbed his flashlight and went out to the driveway. A minute later, his voice echoed back from the dark. "Mary, come look." On her windshield lay a folded note and a crushed rose, its petals blackened by the cold. The note read, "You shouldn't have told on me." After that, Robert bought her a small handgun. Hannah didn't want it. "I don't even know how to use one," she said, her eyes wet. But she carried it in her purse anyway. May 23, 1981. Hannah had taken a coworker to the hospital after he'd been stung by something behind the office. She called me from the waiting room around 7 that evening. "Mom, I'll be home soon. Can you keep Caleb a little longer?" "Of course, honey. Drive safe, okay?" That was the last time I ever heard her voice. Her coworker said she was heading to the parking lot when a car pulled up. Its headlights flashed twice. She walked toward it like she recognized whoever was inside. The door opened. She leaned in and then the car sped away. No one caught the license plate. The next morning, her own car was still there. Purse gone, gun missing. When the police began investigating, the calls started coming to me. "You shouldn't have let her walk away that night," the voice said the second time he called. "What do you want from us?" I whispered. "She's with me now," he said. "She belongs to me. Always did." That same night, Robert found our back gate wide open. Caleb's tricycle had been moved from the porch to the middle of the yard. We didn't sleep for weeks. Then one night around midnight, the phone rang again. I picked up, my voice trembling. "She called for you," he said. "What?" "She said your name before I made her quiet. I told her she didn't need you anymore." My hand went numb. The receiver slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. June 10th, 1981. The Fairgrove Chronicle printed an article about Hannah's disappearance. The very next day, the newsroom got an anonymous call. "I killed her," the man said. "She was my love, my sister. She betrayed me." Then he hung up. When the police traced the call, it led to an old gas station payphone 2 towns over, the same one Michael used to haunt between jobs. They questioned him, of course. But there was no evidence. "You're crazy," he said when I confronted him. "You're trying to blame your own son for something you don't understand." He packed up and left town a week later. Never came back. 4 years passed before they found Hannah, or what was left of her. A construction crew outside Cedar Ridge uncovered a shallow grave. The bones were wrapped in a floral bedsheet, the same pattern Hannah had in her old apartment. DNA confirmed what our hearts already knew. I'll never forget the sheriff's face when he came to tell me. He looked like he might cry. They never found Michael either. Some said he ran off to Oklahoma. Others whispered he was in prison under another name. I stopped caring. Robert passed away in 1998. Caleb grew up quiet, cautious, the kind of man who checks the locks twice before bed. He has 2 children now. I still live in Fair Grove, though the town doesn't feel like mine anymore. Some nights when the wind pushes against the windows, the old phone line outside rattles, and for a heartbeat, I swear I can hear it ringing. And I wonder if Michael's still out there. If he still believes Hannah is his, I pray God proves him wrong. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a tight-knit family that ran a small but high-end studio rental business downtown. My parents started it when I was still in high school, and by the time I hit college, I'd taken over part of the day-to-day management, maintenance, payments, security. Our building was known for one thing: safety. We had digital locks on every door, cameras in every hallway, motion sensors in the stairwells, even fingerprint scanners at the main entrance. Back then, that kind of tech felt futuristic. My dad used to joke, "If parents can trust you with their daughters, you'll never run out of tenants." And he was right. Most of our renters were young women just starting their lives in the city. Their parents didn't just rent rooms, they bought peace of mind. The place was spotless, quiet, and always watched. The rent was steep, but every unit stayed full. That summer, I was home from Oregon State working full-time at the building to save for tuition. My days blurred into a calm, predictable rhythm. Sweep the halls, swap out door codes, fix a bulb, check the security feeds. I didn't mind it. The faint hum of fluorescent lights, the steady smell of detergent in the air, it all felt safe, familiar. But that was before she moved in. Her name was Haley Connors, 21, transfer student from some small town outside Spokane. She had short black hair and anxious eyes that darted everywhere, like she expected something to jump out of the shadows. I first met her when she came to sign the lease with her father, a big man with thick glasses and a handshake that nearly cracked my knuckles. "Is this place really secure?" he asked, scanning the walls like he was already doubting the locks. Yes, sir, I told him. 2 separate camera systems, auto-locking doors, and my family lives on site. He nodded, seemed reassured. Haley, though, she barely looked at me, just stared down at the lease and signed. Within 2 weeks, she'd already asked, no, insisted, that I change her digital door code 3 times. Each time she'd whisper, sorry. I think someone might have seen me type it in. I'd point to the manual in her drawer. You can change it yourself. It's pretty simple, step by step right there. She'd just shake her head. I don't want to mess it up. Please, could you just do it for me? Her voice trembled slightly, her fingers tapping against her phone. I figured she was just the paranoid type. We got a few of those every year. By the 2nd month, things spiraled. One evening around 8, she came storming into the front office, eyes red and wild. My mom and I were doing the books when she burst in. Somebody's been in my room, she shouted. Mom looked up immediately. What do you mean, sweetheart? Haley was shaking, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. I left this wedged in my door before class. When I came back, it was inside my room. And my blanket, it was folded differently. Someone's going in when I'm gone. Mom and I exchanged a glance. My stomach sank. Haley, I said carefully. No one here goes into a tenant's unit without permission. I was on the roof all morning cleaning gutters, you can ask anyone. Her eyes narrowed. Then who else could it be? You're the only one with the master key card, right? Her words hit like a slap. Yes, but I haven't used it, I said, my voice tightening. If you want, we can check the hallway footage. She crossed her arms. You said those cameras only cover the front and parking lot, right? I hesitated. Yeah. She gave a sharp, bitter laugh. How convenient. I felt my jaw tighten, but before I could respond, Mom stepped in gently. Haley, honey, I understand you're scared. Maybe you just forgot. Long day, maybe you're tired. Try to rest, okay? Haley's glare lingered a moment longer before she turned and left, muttering, No one ever believes me. When the door closed, Mom sighed. She's just nervous, maybe homesick. Don't take it personally. But I did take it personally. The idea that she thought I'd sneak into her room, it made me sick. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I saw her in the hallway, she'd glance at me like I was something to be afraid of. I noticed her door sealed with tape, tiny pencil marks around the knob like she was tracking movement. Something was wrong, but it wasn't me. So I decided to find out what was really happening. I dug out an old Canon digital camera, barely 2 megapixels, grainy as hell. I hid it inside an empty soda box near the stairwell on Haley's floor. It wasn't great, no sound, lousy light, but if anyone was roaming around late at night, I'd see it. 3 nights passed. Nothing. But on the 4th, everything changed. It was Thursday. I remember because I'd ordered spicy wings and was sitting cross-legged on the office floor, watching an old Lakers game on my phone. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. Then a loud knock at the main door. Sharp, urgent. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood there under the yellow porch light. Are you the building manager? One asked. Yeah. Is something wrong? We got a call from one of your tenants, the taller one said, flipping open his notepad. A Miss Haley Connors. She's reported a possible break-in. My chest tightened. Oh, for God's sake. They didn't respond, just followed me silently up the stairs. When we reached Haley's room, the door was hanging open. She stood in the middle of it, shaking and crying. Look at it, she said, her voice raw. Look. The walls glimmered under the ceiling light, coated in what looked like silver dust. Her eyeshadow smeared across every surface like someone had detonated a makeup bomb. It clung to the door handle, shimmered along the walls, streaked across the bathroom tiles. What the hell? I muttered, stepping closer. Haley pointed at the doorknob, trembling. I covered it with my eyeshadow before I left for the weekend. I went home to Spokane. It was a test to see if anyone touched it. And now look, it's everywhere. Someone broke in and spread it all over. The officers traded glances. One turned to me. Sir, do you have access to this room? Only with the master key card, I said quickly, but I didn't. He cut me off. We'll need to check your hands, clothes, and anything you've handled for the same residue. You're kidding, I said, my stomach turning. But they weren't. They made me sit in the hall while they swabbed everything. My keyboard, my toolbox, even the faucet in the shared bathroom. Of course, they found nothing. When they left, my parents just stared at me. I could see doubt flickering in their eyes, like they wanted to believe me but couldn't quite say it out loud. Dad finally sighed. "Let's just cooperate with the investigation. If you didn't do anything, it'll come out." That night I sat in my room, fists clenched, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I kept replaying everything. Her accusations, the glitter, the cops' faces. And then it hit me. The camera. I scrambled for the soda box under the stairwell, pulled out the little Canon and plugged it into my laptop. The footage loaded slow, frame by frame. The first 2 nights, nothing. Just the still, empty hall. Then at 11:07 p.m. on the second night movement, a man appeared. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low. He paused, glancing both ways down the hall before pulling something from his pocket. A key card. My breath caught. He swiped it against Haley's lock. The red light blinked green. He slipped inside. I leaned closer, my palms sweating. The timestamp matched the weekend Haley had gone home. He stayed in there for almost 30 minutes. Then, when he finally stepped back into the hallway, he looked straight at the camera. Just a second. But it was enough. Even in the grainy frame, I knew that face. He'd been to the building before. I barely slept. The next morning, I took the footage straight to the police. They ran it through facial recognition, and within hours, the name came back. Ryan Connors. Haley's older brother. Turns out he'd been visiting her off and on, helping her adjust to city life. But when detectives dug through his texts, a darker picture formed. He wasn't protecting her. He was controlling her. He hated that she lived alone, hated her friends, the guys she talked to. For weeks, he'd been sneaking into her apartment with a copied key card, subtly rearranging things, folding blankets, moving papers, leaving small signs just to mess with her head. When she told him how scared she was, he'd comforted her. Played the savior. "You can crash at my place if you're scared," he'd told her. And she had. The night before the glitter incident, she'd gone home for a few days. Ryan must have found out about her trap, and instead of stopping, he'd doubled down, broke in again, spreading her makeup everywhere, mocking her paranoia. He never expected she'd call the cops. When they confronted him, he tried to shrug it off. "I was just checking on her," he said. But the camera, the fingerprints, the keycard logs, they told a different story. He was arrested for trespassing, property damage, and unlawful entry. Haley moved out the following week. She didn't even come for her deposit. Her mother mailed a note to my parents instead. It said Haley was taking time off school, focusing on therapy. I never saw her again. But sometimes, I still see that night in my head. The way the pearl dust shimmered on the walls, catching the light like frost. The way Haley's voice cracked when she realized someone had been inside her room all along. It wasn't the locks or the cameras that failed her. It was trust. And I'll never forget the moment I understood that the real monsters aren't the strangers we fear. They're the ones who hug us when we're crying,